Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is MTG Dude, and today we're going to be covering the zombies that we got in Modern Horizons 3, and something that I haven't been doing a lot lately is getting the cards that, complement the zombie tribe. I haven't been doing that a lot recently, so I will be trying my best to continue doing that here on forward. But now, let's go on ahead and get into it, starting off with the Accursed Marauder. For 1 and a black, this is a 2/1 zombie warrior. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a non-token creature. Oh, where to start with this one? So for this one to be a 2-drop, that's a 2/1, and they have to sacrifice a non-token creature. This is great, especially if your opponents are doing things like, especially if they're doing things that copy tokens, but that's the only thing they have on the board. Well, they kind of just push themselves into a hole, so now they have to sacrifice the thing that's a non-token. For decks that are looking to be aggro a little bit, I feel like this could go really good. If you're looking to copy this a bunch of different times, I would think this would be really good, especially since, yeah, each player has to do it, but eventually if you don't have nothing but a board of tokens and your opponents have only non-token creatures, well, you can wipe the board of their regular creatures and let your tokens get through. But also in the day and age, every deck is playing some kind of token creature. Some way, somehow, a token creature will be made on their side of the board. And, sometimes it's just better to make sure that they can't sacrifice it. Moving on to Refurbished Familiar. For 3 and a black, this is a 2/1 artifact creature zombie rat, but it has affinity for artifacts, so it can get it down to a single black for a 2/1 with flying. And it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. In bigger games, this is amazing because not only can you just make them all discard a card, but for a single mana sometimes, especially if you have a bunch of rocks on the board, you might be able to draw a couple cards, especially if your opponents are light-handed and it is a little late game. So I feel like this one could be actually pretty good in a more of a late game situation, especially if you have plenty of artifacts to make it cheaper. Retrofitted Transmogrant. For a single black, this is a 1/1 artifact creature zombie. For 3 and a black, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped with 2+1/+1 counters on it. This really reminds me of the Razor Blade Transmogrant or something like that from the Brothers War. That was a 2-drop colorless zombie, I think it was, if I'm correct. This really reminds me of that, and it actually kind of looks like it too from that era of from those type of sets. So that's what we're looking at. It looks like something Ashnod would come up with. But I feel like this one is good in decks you want to be use recursive effects. If you wanted to, you could try and loop this a couple times to sacrifice it, bring it back, sacrifice it, bring it back, stuff like that. And for maybe even Pauper, I feel like this could be really good as a early 1-drop threat, especially if your opponents have less creatures that they can kind of they can't live without. Moving on to the Grim Servant. For 3 and a black, this is a 3/2 zombie warlock with menace. Whenever it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card with mana value less than or equal to your devotion to black. If you're playing mono black, this could get really good. If you're wiped on creatures, but you still have plenty of artifacts and enchantments. Because, like Crowded Crypt has a black pip in it, so it adds to your devotion. Cards like the... Oh, what is it called? It's the 3-mana artifact from Theros Beyond Death that adds to your devotion, no matter what color it is. But it just adds 1 to your devotion. And it taps for 1, and if you have a god, you gain a life. but then you reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle, and you lose 3. So I feel like if you're in a big black, mono black deck, this could be really good. If you're already kind of getting to where you need to go, but you're missing that one key piece, I feel like this would be great. And it is less than or equal to, so if it's early game and it's like turn 4, you play this and this is your only one black pip, well, I mean, heck, you can look for your soul ring, look for any low cost mana rock, or any kind of acceleration. Dark Ritual comes to mind when it comes to something like this. So this has a really high ceiling, but also a really decent floor if you're looking to run this in a mono black deck. And I mean, even if you're not running it in a mono black deck, I mean, eventually you're going to amass some kind of devotion to black. So, I mean, especially if you're playing zombies. And then we finally get to one of the greatest things that ever happened to zombie goblin wizards, the Warren Soul Trader, for 2 and a black. This is a 3/3 zombie goblin wizard that you pay 1, you sack a creature, and you create a treasure token. And it does not enter tapped. You don't have to sacrifice multiple creatures. It's quite literally sack a dude, pay a life, get a treasure. And it really just doesn't get much better than that. I mean, if you're looking for an alternative to, the Great Phyrexian Altar, this could be one of them, especially if you have like a Blood Artist effect where you're constantly regaining that life. I mean, you really can't go wrong. I mean, just essentially just making more mana. If you have like any kind of doubling effect also, if you're running green, you just make more treasures than you're losing. If you're running white, you make more treasures than you're losing, especially if you have the card, the token tripler. I mean, you just make 3. You double your mana at that point. So I feel like this is going to be, and already is, a great card, and it's just going to get better as time goes on, as we get more and more different pieces. And finally, to round out the zombies, we have the White of the Reliquary for a black and a green. This is a 2/2 zombie knight with vigilance. When it gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard, and then you can tap and sacrifice another creature, search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So for those that don't know, the Knight of the Reliquary used to do something similar. But for this is even more busted and broken because, the one thing that comes to my mind right now is turn 2, Knight of the Reliquary. Fine. Turn 3, Scoot Swarm. Turn 4, play a land, get a Scoot Insect, sack the Scoot Insect, and if you have a way to untap it when a creature enters the battlefield, if you're playing like Sultai, this could be amazing, or anything else that triggers an ability on a creature entering the battlefield to untap. Which Retreat to Korahim also comes to mind. It allows you to untap target creature. So in a Sultai build, this would be this would be probably turn 3. You could just get all your lands out, especially if you have a way to get multiple lands out on turn 3. That would be pretty good. Like if you found a way to get a mana rock out early. So turn 1 Dark Ritual into a Scoots. No. Turn 1 Forest Soul Ring, or Swamp Soul Ring. Turn 2 Lotus Petal Soul Ring, tap Soul Ring for colorless, Lotus Petal for green. That's your Scoot, and play a Swamp or Forest. Knight of the Reliquary. Turn 3, play an island, play the Intruder Alarm. I think Intruder Alarm actually costs, no, I think that's 3 and a blue. Okay, so then you go. You can just get all of your lands out of your library and put them onto the battlefield tapped. And you could do that in response to like right before you get to your turn. So I mean, turn 5, you're rocking it out as hard as you want to because now you're just drawing straight gas. Especially if you can cycle Field of the Dead into there, and now you have all of your lands on the battlefield. You kind of might not want to do that with all your fetches. So if you want to keep enough lands in there for your fetch lands to trigger, that would probably be really smart. But now we're going to move into the cards that support this tribe a little bit. We're going to look at cards like Gravedigg for 1 and a black. It's a sorcery. You could choose one. Target player puts a 2/2 black zombie creature token, creates a 2/2 black zombie creature token, or you can return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And for an extra 2, you can choose both abilities. So not a bad ability. It's not a bad card, especially if you just want to get a 2/2 real quick, or if you want to get a 2/2 and bring something back. Note it is just to your hand, but I mean, usually we're just throwing them out as we get them anyway. And I am kind of glad that they actually brought the scene of the Gravedigger actually, digging. It's the Gravedigg. It's the iconic scene of him looking for something that he's probably going to regret end up looking for. Now we move on to the Mindless Conscription. For 2 and a black, this is an enchantment. Whenever it enters the battlefield or whenever you draw your 3rd card each turn, you amass 3 zombies. So you make a 0/0 zombie army token, then you put 3+1/+1 counters on it. And now for us to draw 3 cards, sometimes it's kind of hard. But if we got the engines going, drawing 3 is like a Sunday walk in the park or graveyard. I mean, pick your poison. Pick your happy place, should I say. And then finally, we have our new zombie commander, if you're willing to try and fight through the trees and the plants, the Necro Bloom for 1 a white, a black, and a green. This is a 2/7, and this is way too high on the toughness for me. A 2/7 on a 4-drop? That's wild. But this is a legendary creature plant, and it does have the landfall ability. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you create a 0/1 plant green plant creature token. I'm getting my words mixed up. If you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token instead. So landfall, make a plant. If you got 7, which is kind of like Field of the Dead territory, which Field of the Dead goes great in this deck, then you make a 2/2. And if you have a Field of the Dead, you get 2 2/2s. Which is pretty awesome. But the second ability is something that we don't see very often. Something that, in these colors, this could actually be something that we could utilize way better than our opponents could, and that we get the chance to play with now. Because Abzan does do a lot of graveyard-based things. The black and the green themselves do a lot. But Orzhov does a lot of recurring also. So with the dredge on your land cards, having dredge 2, it could actually be the best thing for you to just go on ahead and start milling. Especially if you have an ability that helps you draw cards whenever a land enters the battlefield. It could be pretty good. But that is going to be it for today, everybody. I really appreciate everybody that has watched the videos, that likes and comments and shares it to your friends. I couldn't be doing this without you guys. And if you're here this long and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Drop me a subscribe. But that is going to be it for today, and I will see you guys next time in the graveyard.